And hello again, soccer fans. Welcome to the latest edition of the M2 Review. And if you are a fan of the Amarillo Bombers, you'll want to stay tuned because we have with us as our special guest this week their head coach, Chad Webb. And why not, Coach? Because you had a terrific weekend up in Colorado at the Rocky Mountain Invitational, completely turning your fortunes around after a winless trip to Wichita for the Heartland Invitational a couple of weekends ago. You went to Colorado and swept all three of your games, including that big win on Sunday against the Inferno. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but congratulations. And I guess the obvious first question is, what turned it around for you this past weekend?
Well, thanks for the congratulations, Brian, and for having me on the show. There's a few things that turned around our results. We were a little more healthy this weekend than we were a couple weeks ago. I don't think we had many guys that were able to play all three games, and we got a little beat up. So we were able to stay healthy. The roster was a little bit stronger. We reduced the amount of mistakes that we made a couple weeks ago. You know, you can make some mistakes inside the game that don't hurt a little bit, and then you can make some mistakes that hurt a lot, and we did that to ourselves a little bit in Wichita. We're still learning and improving. You know, it's still this game is still pretty new to myself and the players, but we're getting better at it and we're improving. And we just found a way to score some goals, man, when we needed them.
That's the name of the game indoors for sure. I always like to say my philosophy, if I was a coach, although it would probably get me lots of gray hairs and I fired fairly quickly, is, you know, you score, you give up one to score two. And that's a little different than the outdoor games for sure, where you've had a ton of success as the West Texas A&M ladies coach. Now, what, your 11th or 12th season, I think?
11 if you count this past COVID season that got taken away from us, but yeah, 11.
Yeah, and a player there as well for the Buffs. So you've had a long run there of great success. And it's interesting, as you point out, you and a lot of your players really didn't have much exposure to the indoor game. Your adjustment as a coach, how has that been? What's been the biggest thing you've had to try and adjust to in terms of maybe philosophy and strategy moving the game indoors now with the Bombers?
Well, it's when we started, I honestly had a hard time keeping up because it was the fastest version of soccer I've ever seen, and it was very chaotic. You know, I had a hard time keeping up. The players were flying around the field, you know, banging into each other, and it was just a little bit like chaos. But we've all calmed down a little bit, and now I feel like I do a much better job of just actually watching the game and trying to figure out little tactics on how to increase your chances of scoring, because you and I just talked about it. It's a high scoring game, and you know, the goalkeepers are really good, and the defenders are really good. So you have to have little tricks sometimes to try to create chances to score.
Well, they don't call it human pinball for nothing, right?
I've never heard that before, but that's appropriate, man.
Yeah,
that's appropriate.
Yeah, it's a different brand, and it's very exciting for sure. Let's talk about this last weekend now in Colorado, and while we do that, we'll roll some highlights both from your side and the four teams that were in it. It was a highly competitive weekend, and maybe start talking first about that game on Sunday that essentially won the championship for you against I'll say the host Inferno, because you guys were actually co-hosts with the Colorado Inferno, but a 10-7 scoreline on your favor, and probably of the 6 games you've played this year, your biggest matchup and your biggest win. Talk just a little bit about how it went and how you were able to pull it out.
Well, we had lost to those guys 6-4. You know, in Wichita. So we had seen them once before. And like I said, one big plus for us was that we had a deeper roster, and some of our, stronger players were back into the mix. So that helped us a lot. But what was impressive from my guys is that at one point in the second quarter, we were losing 6-2. And right before halftime, they committed one of those blue card fouls inside the box, which gives you a penalty kick. And now that I've seen what a penalty kick looks like indoor, I kind of feel bad for the goalkeepers. I don't really know what they're supposed to do in that situation. We had one called against us in Wichita, which was the first one I saw, and our goalkeeper's name, his name is Fredo, and I just remember looking at him going, I don't really know what he's supposed to do about this. We actually got one in our favor, so they kind of hurt themselves there, which I was talking earlier about how we made some mistakes in Wichita that really hurt us. That guy choosing to commit that foul inside the penalty box right before half gave us a goal. Vitor took that penalty, and that made it 6-3. And we tried to come up with a plan as to how we were going to get back in the game because it was 6-3 at halftime, and we came up with the goal that we were going to try to have the game tied by the end of the third quarter, and which I thought was a pretty audacious goal, but we have to try somehow, right? And we actually outdid ourselves because at the end of the third quarter we were up 7-6, and then the game ended 10-7. So to be down 6-2, we went on a 8-1 run. So all in the third and fourth quarter. Well, the penalty kick at the end of the second quarter, but the third and the fourth quarter. So it was a pretty impressive second half by our guys, man.
Yeah, very impressive. And I think maybe one of the things you guys have all probably learned about the game, it's really a game of momentum. It can change very quickly and almost without notice. I mean, it just takes, like you said, maybe that penalty shot at the end of the second period to put a little spark in your guys' legs, to give you a little confidence. And was that the case? It just you could kind of feel the momentum swing there in that third quarter?
Oh yeah, you can definitely feel it. That takes me back to your previous question. That's a dramatic difference between indoor and outdoor, man. The momentum swings in indoor can lead to just half a dozen goals, just all of a sudden. And that's basically what happened. Yeah, momentum swing, and we held on to that momentum, and we rode it, and ended up scoring quite a few goals.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Vitor, because he is actually the league's leading scorer right now with 11 points. Big weekend. Guy you know well. Played at West Texas A&M, not for you, of course, but you were familiar with him. And tell me a little bit about Vitor and his background, and maybe not all outdoor players are good indoor players. The transition isn't always easy, but obviously he's making it. And so tell us a little bit about what has made the transition for Vitor so successful.
Well, so I just call him V. If that confuses you. Okay, yeah. V's an interesting character. He grew up in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and he was actually part of the Sao Paulo Academy there for a while when he was a kid. Came over to the States and went to a junior college somewhere in Georgia. I'm not exactly sure which one. And he transferred to West Texas for his last 2 years of school. Very good player. And he graduated with an engineering degree and got a job here in Amarillo. So he was already here. He was already here living and working when we started this team. So it was pretty easy to recruit, what I think is one of the best players in the league. You mentioned the transition from outdoor to indoor, and you hit the nail on the head, man. It's not an easy transition for everyone. There's some pretty talented outdoor players in this town that they come to our training sessions and they just don't fit in. But I think part of the Brazilian culture, is to grow up playing futsal. And he did that so much as a kid that I think that's close enough to the indoor game that he did a lot of that as a kid, and that futsal improves your ability to receive and pass, and then all those little tricks that he's got in his wheelhouse. I'm sure those are all stuff learned just having a good time on a futsal court when he was a little kid. But I think that futsal stuff is part of the reason that his move from outdoor to indoor has been so successful for him.
And you've got really a depth of talent there, which I think is one of the things that got you through maybe last weekend as well. I think you had 10 different players get on the score sheet in that win over the Inferno, and maybe you can fill us in on a couple of the other guys that you really count on game in and game out to be leaders both on the field and on the score sheet.
Well, our leaders on the field are actually, the senior citizens of the team, which
we're allowed to say that, right?
Yeah. I guess that goes with any team. Usually the stereotypical oldest players are the ones with the most experience and can lead by example or by mouth or whatever. But I think our leader for the past two tournaments has been a guy named Abel Olivas. He's 30, 31 years old. He's one of the old guys on the team, and he plays in the back for us, and he just does everything for us. He goes unnoticed on the stat sheet and the awards. I don't think he's ever going to be chosen by media or opposition coaches for one of those all tournament teams, but he's on our team and he's on line one for as long as I'm the coach. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys. Our goalkeeper showed a lot of leadership before we went into the Colorado tournament in training. He after we got smacked around a little bit, I'm sure that that's not fun for a goalkeeper to pick the ball out of the net that much, but that's going to happen in indoor. But he kind of stepped up and showed us some stuff in training, because sometimes to learn, it's easy for me to see stuff from the bench, but I can't get a player's perspective on things. And so he really helped me, and he helped the team get prepared for this Colorado tournament. So those two guys stand out in my mind as leaders on the field.
You don't think about the defensive part about this game very often when you see scores like 10-7 and 11-9, and you don't appreciate that they've actually had really good games potentially, but the scoreline doesn't necessarily show that. So mentally, it has to be they have to be in the right mindset and understand that goals happen and just have that short memory, if you will, to move on to the next play.
I thought some of our best players in the Colorado tournament were some of the guys that play in the back for us.
Yeah, and that does go overlooked. Let's just look ahead real quick before we wrap things up here. You had a really good season last year in M2. You were in the top echelon, over 500. Obviously, turned things around here this season. What did you learn from last season that you've been able to take into this season and going forward? What lessons have you learned that you think will help the Bombers succeed?
Well, when we started last year in the M2, we kind of thought we were pretty good, but man, we were naive. We started our M2 experience 2-4, and we also played against that team from Chihuahua.
They're pretty good.
Yeah, we took some lessons out of those two losses, but. After going 2-4, we kind of flipped it around, and we were on a little 5-1 run before we got shut down by COVID. And I think what we learned was some of the things that I was talking about earlier. Is you just can't make those mistakes that just automatically lead to goals for the other team. We're going to make enough mistakes in the game that you got to be smarter when it comes to making those penalty mistakes. We spend way too much time in the box. I'm pretty sure some of the other teams think we're nasty or thugs. I think we had the two top penalty guys last season. And it's not that we're trying to do that on purpose. We're just learning. And we're getting a lot better at that. And we're just trying to get better at power plays, those situational things, and keeping the ball. When you give the ball away to the other team, you're just giving them chances to score goals against you, because even as good as your defending can be, the players in this league, they're so good. You don't know what their backgrounds are, where they came from, but everybody can play in this league.
Yeah, I think we were talking just in the office here about that, about just how competitive almost every single game in Wichita and Colorado have been, even with Omaha, who's making a jump up, and the Alliance, who so very refreshing and impressive, I think, for everyone to see the level of play. Well, Coach, congratulations again on a great weekend. Excited to see how well you did, and so happy for the fans down there in Amarillo, who hopefully soon will get a chance to come see the Bombers again in person. But we know you will continue. Yep, we hope you continue that great success, and we'll move forward with the M2 season, as challenging as it is. Really a fine job in Colorado, and we'll look forward to catching up with you and the Bombers later on the season. So thanks again, Coach.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, fans, that'll do it for this edition of the M2 Review. Of course, join us each Thursday online for a new program, and we'll have some very exciting news and announcements regarding M2 soccer coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So make sure you tune in for the M2 Review, and you can get the very latest information at m2soccer.com and, of course, on all the M2 Soccer social platforms. Until next Thursday, have a great week, everybody.